I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast. So James Villa is a Dallas-based concert photographer. He has been a long-time fixture in Deep Ellum, and as of late is GM and house photographer of the legendary venue Trees. His online publication On Tour Monthly has been going strong for over 20 years and has taken James all over the world to shoot shows. He's always open to helping out young photographers and is a really great guy. Here's my interview with James Villa. Okay, I got James with me today. James Villa, photographer. What do you manage Trees? Is that right?
I'm a marketing manager and the box office manager at Trees.
Okay, cool. And you've got On Tour Monthly as your publication.
Yeah, correct.
All right, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning. So you're from El Paso?
I'm from El Paso.
True Texan. Okay.
Yeah, true Texan. Yeah.
So how did you? You can give us some details if you need to, but how did you get to Dallas?
It's a really weird transition. I used to go to Houston a lot, and eventually ended up in Houston after I got out of high school. Had to go back to El Paso to pick up my mom. Moved back to Houston. Met my current ex-wife, which is an interesting story. But we met in Houston, and one day she just came home and says, "Hey, by the way, my company's offering me a job in Dallas." And I hated Dallas. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go to Dallas. This is like the worst thing that could happen. And of course I'm thinking this in my head, and she kind of gave me a really weird, like, it wasn't really like an ultimatum, but she was kind of like, you're either going to go or you're going to stay. And I'm like, well, hell, I guess I'm going.
Right.
And at that point I was already kind of shooting shows secretly. I was just doing interesting stuff on the side and running away from people catching me with cameras and stuff. It was always something I wanted to do. But when we moved here, I think it was probably maybe a couple of weeks after we moved here that I came down to Curtain Club. That was the first venue I ever came to, and I forgot the name of the band that I came to see, but she ended up being on Rock of Love or something, and it was pretty cool. And I went to Liquid Lounge after that, and just the Blind Lemon and all these clubs, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Yeah, and Dallas started kind of growing on me, and it was one of those weird transitions when I didn't know. I always wanted to have a club or own a club, and my goal was to have one at 35. I was in my 20s when we moved down here, and I just kind of got involved in the scene, and it was funny because my son was in t-ball, and his t-ball coach was Jason Moreno, which is now the singer of Drowning Pool.
Okay.
And Jason was in a band. He had been in a really big band called Plastic Tongue for a while, and that was a huge hit here in Dallas. And he would tell me things, and people would recognize him when we were in the street. And me and Jason just became friends. And he was currently in a band called Crankfish, and we hung out a lot. And he'd invite me over to go listen to them play, and I really got involved with it and stuff. And I didn't realize how popular Jason was when he was here. But we used to go out and they would play shows out of town, and I would always ride with Jason, and he was a pretty straight edge guy, didn't drink, didn't do anything, and I would sit in the car with him and we would talk about music, and then he's like, I got to go sing. So he'd run in and sing, and then we'd run back, and then we'd just leave. Huh. And it was kind of cool because it kind of really painted a picture of what it's all really all about. And you see an image of an artist, and you see these things, and you think, oh, these guys are bigger than life, and but they're really not, and obviously Jason moved on now, and he's singing for Drowning Pool, and it's really cool to see that. But that was my first taste of really knowing somebody that was in the business and kind of really knew a lot of stuff, and that's kind of how I ended up here, and that's where I'm at now, and I've been here since 2000.
Oh wow. So, God, you've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of bands come and go, and I'd love to see a flourishment of what was before, because we really had some incredible talent here, and It's unfortunate that a lot of those bands kind of didn't migrate out of here, and then the ones that did, and they're kind of just running on one record, and it's a shame because there's some of these guys are so talented, and it's just, I think that's what really elevated me into being who I am, and just really, my whole thing was to showcase artists that people didn't know, and just really get to know those people and just really know who they were, and I think that's what happened. It turned into me wanting to own a club, to me wanting to capture something, because I was never really a singer or anything like that. I thought I could sing, but I wasn't good. Jason was always trying to get me to sing in a cover band with him. He's like, let's make a band. And I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of local bands that allowed me to go on stage with them and sing. And it's cool because I got to feel that, and it was really neat. And I did it with Drowning Pool in El Paso for my birthday one time, and it was really cool.
Nice.
And it was really neat because it was just something I always wanted to do, and it's like, obviously nobody booed me off stage or anything, so I was probably pretty good, even though I don't think I was good. But it was a funny thing, and I really appreciate Jason, and there's other bands that I'll mention later, but Jason was a big influence on what I did, even though I never really understood how big he had gotten at some point. He gave me a CD with all his music. And, I just kind of put it aside. I didn't really think too much about it. And one day we're sitting in the car talking before a show, and he plays this music. And I'm like, what is that? And he looks at me and he goes, I gave you that record like 2 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, And it was a big oops. And I ran home and listened to it. And I was like, wow, this guy's amazing.
Oh.
Because the band that he was in at that time, it was good, but it wasn't what he had done before. And I was like, man, this guy is so talented. And I think it was just him, and he was just such a good guy, and he was so straightforward. He didn't really say anything. He was just really, really good guy. And we're still friends, and I think we never really had this conversation before, but he was a big shaper in the way that I handle things. And I learned a lot of lessons, not just from him, but from some of the other bands that I worked with, and it changed the way that I am now, and I have a lot more respect for what they do and what they go through, and so it's an interesting transition.
I feel like we skipped way ahead of like, how did you get into photography?
Yeah, it's funny because I always wanted to be a photographer to an extent. My brother, we never really had much growing up, but my brother always had good jobs and stuff, and I was growing up watching him, and he would have all these cameras and all this stuff. And actually, it's funny because he had some pretty expensive cameras, and he would let me shoot with them. And I was 7, 8 years old, and he shot a lot of wildlife and stuff like that, and just a lot of cool stuff. And I liked it, but it never really, I was just like, oh, well, and growing up, I never had a camera. I had one until, I think it was like 16 or 17. I had a Kodak disc camera. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And I had it for maybe 2 months, and my mom washed it in the washing machine, and I thought, oh, it's ruined. I was so angry, and I picked it up like a year later, and it still worked. I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. So, I did a little bit of photography stuff, and I always wanted, it was always one of these things. I saw a movie a long time ago with Deborah Winger. I think it was called Mike, or Where's Mike, or I forgot what it was called, but it was basically this guy that loved taking his photo, his photo taken. And I thought, man, that'd be so cool to have somebody follow me around and take photos, and I always thought that was a really cool thing. So then, I started getting into music. I mean, I was always into music, but I started getting into really looking at some of the visuals and some of the stuff, some of the aspects of photography. And I was like, man, these guys, it's like they tell a story, and it was some of the stuff, I really didn't look a lot at Rolling Stone and stuff, because those were more, I thought those were always more polished. And a lot of them more, I thought they were more staged, even though they probably weren't, but they didn't seem as clean as something like in Hit Parader or in Cream or something like that. Those just seem a little more real. I really, really, really got into photography when I saw Rip Magazine, and Leon Friend and the stuff that he did, and just the way that he and I read his book later in life, and I was really, I think that kind of catapulted me over that. Because it was just one of those things where I was shooting a lot of local bands, and I had some bands, help me out, let me shoot them, and I used to shoot with flash, and I would get in their face, and they were cool with it,
Right.
because I think they saw the potential in what I could do, and they always let me do it, and people would be like, you shouldn't be shooting with flash, it's this and that, and it bothers the band. So I go, well, this band doesn't care,
Yeah.
but I really learned how to get what I wanted from flash because I knew how to use the flash. I didn't blow out the image, I just captured it and slowed it down, and so I think that was the thing, and I shot a few shows in Houston at a place called Primeco. It's called Primeco. It's called Retribution something today now. It's a really cool place down in downtown Houston. But I got to meet a lot of big artists there because I would hang out in the back just to try to get an autograph or something. And I got to meet like Brandon Boyd of Incubus, and we hung out. I mean, we literally hung out for like an hour and a half, and it was just me, him, and my ex-wife, and then a couple of kids came over and hung out with us. So it was 5 of us in the group, and we literally just talked about nothing. It was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, I got to meet Courtney Love and Scott Weiland. That was my idol when I was like starting out, because I was like, man, this guy, that little dance he used to do on stage and everything. It was just so. It's just like. I don't know. It was just, to me, it was like surreal. It's kind of like looking at Jim Morrison, a modern Jim Morrison, modern day Jim Morrison.
I see that.
But he was amazing, and I got to talk to him a couple of times, and I got to meet his ex-wife Mary. And she was really cool. She was really nice. Actually, we went to a venue, and we were at a venue, and we followed him. I followed him in my car. I followed the bus to the hotel, and he got out of he didn't get out of the bus. Mary came out, and she's like, can I help you guys? And I'm like, I just want to meet Scott. And she's like, is it just you two? I go, yeah, we're the only ones here. And she's like, well, hold on, sit tight. And she went in, and 10 minutes later, he came out.
Wow.
And he came out and met us halfway, and I got to take a photo with him. And it was amazing. It was like, you can do this. This can really happen. You can really meet these guys. And it was because to me, Brandon Boyd was really starting out. And it wasn't. He wasn't really at that level. But when I met Scott Weiland, I was like, wow, I want to do this.
Yeah.
This is something I want to do. It's not that hard to meet these guys. And it was funny because a couple of weeks later they had a show. A radio station was moving from one end of the dial to the other end of the dial. And they had a secret band, and I knew it was going to be them because the drummer says, "Hey, we might be back in a couple of weeks or a month." And I was like, "Awesome, man! That would be great." So sure enough, when they came back, waited again outside the venue, that same venue, and this time Scott stopped to sign autographs. And he comes around the corner, and he comes over to me and my ex-wife and says, "You guys aren't going to follow me again tonight, are you?" And I was like, wow, and it's one of those things where people always say you never want to meet your idols because you might not be happy with what you see or what you get.
Sure.
And it was just crazy because, I talked to him outside of Trees maybe 20 years later, and I told him the story, and his current wife at that time was crying, and she's like, "You don't remember that?" And he's like, "No, I don't." And it was just, I guess so many things had happened already at that point in his life that, it was interesting because, it was one of those. He was one of those guys. He was probably one of the guys, and a guy from a band called He Is Legend. The lead singer of He Is Legend are probably two of the guys. The reason I grew my hair back out again and everything, because I had short hair for a long time, is because of him.
I can't imagine your short hair.
Shiloh Kroom, yeah, Shiloh Kroom from He Is Legend.
Okay.
Amazing guy, amazing band, and I think Mike Zemer just started managing them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, local guy managing He Is Legend, but yeah, it's and I think that's how I got started. I just really fell in love with the whole, the whole thing, and I've never been like a fanboy. I never really do stuff like that. I mean, I think I got that all out of my system in Houston. And when I got here, I just totally changed my whole perspective. But yeah, when I lived in Houston, I used to go to the shows and hide, secretly shoot shows and but I was still kind of a really fanish because I had never met anything like that. I lived in El Paso. You never see anything in El Paso.
Right.
I saw Motley Crue in their infancy in El Paso. I mean, they were terrible. And that's it. I mean, I saw Motley Crue and Loudness, and that was it. Those were the only two bands I ever saw. And so my eyes didn't get opened up until I moved to Houston. And and from there it just went crazy, you know. And I basically saw as many bands as I could, because my ex-wife was really good at going to shows. She was always up for a show, you know. And it was one of those things. And so I got to see so much stuff. And there's a little side note on something like that. When I finally came to Houston, I was in the car with my nephew, and we were listening to the Toadies. And he's like, "Man, I love these guys," and he was so excited. And I said, "Yeah, that's cool, man." I think they're from Dallas. I'm not really sure. I said, "But I think they're from Dallas."
Right.
He's like, "Wow, man, these guys are so cool," you know. And it's funny because later on, I actually got to hang out with the Toadies when I was first starting shooting, and we hung out in their tour bus, and it was one of those crazy. That first time I'd ever been in a tour bus, and it was the craziest thing because I was like, "Man, these are the guys that my nephew loved," you know, and it's so crazy that it's all so tight and it's all so small, and you. And, you know, and I think that I learned very early in shooting that you don't burn any bridges, because if you do, I mean, somebody's going to find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I think that's one of the things that, another thing too, is that when I started, I never thought I would be a rock star photographer where I'd be shooting all these people because I was so good. Because I always knew that those positions were kind of tied up, and it doesn't really work that way.
Right.
So I've seen so many photographers come and go, and it's like, you know, you gotta be in it for the right reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, there's opportunities for you to make money. There is. That's not something that I want to discourage people from doing. But it's just, you have to really kind of understand your place and know what you're doing it for and the real reason why it's there. Because it is an art, you know, and it is a medium, and you have to have respect. I've never posted a photo of somebody that I thought was in bad light, because I try not to, because I wouldn't want something posted of me that's not good.
Yes.
Because there's some things that I've seen taking photos where I'm just like, I'm not going to show any of these to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and then just because of certain aspects or something that I saw that maybe nobody else noticed, but to me, I was like, I can't do that, you know. And I think it's one of the things that I value more, is just respecting the artist and respecting what you do. And I learned some lessons along the way, and you know, and I'm glad that I had those opportunities. I got yelled at a lot by people that I really respected, but I learned, you know, and I think that's what I do now. I look at people, and sometimes I want to be like the guy that tells them, "Hey, don't do this," but then I think, well, you know what, you should really learn on your own. But
yeah, it's a tough one though.
Yeah, but you know, to me, it only bothers me, not really when I get interfered with and stuff, but it just bothers me like when some photographers put the camera right in front of the artist's face. You know, because I feel like, you know, that's a lot of space. That's a lot of personal space you're getting into, you know. And I understand if you're reaching high to try to grab the shot, but you can do it at a distance. You don't have to be right in front of their nose and their mic, you know, because that just right there is, you're crossing a big barrier there. And I think that's one of those things that, you know, but yeah, that's how I got it. I know it went into a 10-mile story, but I think that's how I really got into it. I just really getting to know the artist and just feeling that connection with them and kind of sharing that connection with people.
When did you make that transition from sneaking your cameras in to actually being at the show to shoot?
Wow. You mean nationally or just locally?
Either one. I mean, like initially, you know.
So, you know, I when I moved to Dallas, I went to go see that band that we were talking about. I can't remember what the name of that band was at Curtain Club, but a couple of weeks later, I shot a band called Hours. And I love that band, you know. Jimmy Necco is to me one of the greatest vocalists that you can imagine. He kind of sounds like Jeff Buckley, and he probably hates that. But he was going to actually be a singer for Guns N' Roses.
Oh wow!
And for Velvet Revolver before they brought in Scott Weiland, but he just couldn't do that. He couldn't transition into that because he had other things going on. But I shot them at I think it was Liquid Lounge or Blind Lemon. I shot them, and that was the first time that I took a professional camera into a venue, and you know, and it was like the go-to starter Canon Rebel, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. You know, I was just shooting it. It was funny because I look at the shots now and I go, man, had I known what I was doing, these would have been great,
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of it was just not understanding, depth of field and really, and really capturing the essence of what was going on. To me, it was just like, oh, look, I'm taking pictures of this guy that's on stage, and
Right.
and it was kind of silly, but and then from there, it just kind of just started going there, and I kind of stopped going to a lot of the venues because a lot of them wouldn't let me in with my camera. I went to Trees a couple of times and I couldn't shoot.
Yeah.
I went to Deep Ellum Live and they wouldn't let me shoot. So I was like, well, I don't know how to do this, So I kind of gave up for a little bit until I met Jason. And Jason, one night, we were sitting there talking in the car, and he says, hey, this band called The Feds, they're playing this weekend. You should go check them out. And I was like, yeah, maybe I will. And it was funny because for some reason, a band named Kitty, a metal band, hit me up because they were playing Curtain Club that night, the same night as The Feds. And they're like, hey, we can give you like $50, $60 if you shoot our show. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea, and I was excited. But then for some reason, I went on the web and I heard The Feds, and I was like, holy crap, these guys are amazing, and I had never heard of them before, and I was like, I'd see them on the Observer, and I'd see them on these little billboards everywhere, The Feds, and then I was like, wow, you know what, I'm going to go see The Feds. I'm not going to go shoot a kitty. I was like, forget it. I'm going to go see The Feds. And The Feds played at Firewater, which is now Gas Monkey Live. And I went, Amplified, sorry. And I went to go see The Feds, and a band called Early Pearl opened up for them. And then The Feds played, and when The Feds played, I remember the first thing I thought of Matt Slider, the singer. I thought it was Patrick Swayze. I go, this guy looks just like Patrick Swayze. And it was great because, seeing him was like a giant on stage, and just hearing his aggressiveness and his voice and just the way he handled the crowd, I was like, man, these guys are going to be famous, and I was so into them. And I took some photos, and those were also pretty bad. There was a few really good ones, but it's probably like 500. I probably had like 10 good ones. And I ran to the print shop the next day to Eckerd or wherever I don't know where I went, Walgreens or whatever, and printed out those photos because they were playing again the next night in Fort Worth. And I think it was Lola's. And I was like, man, I got to show them these photos. I was so excited, and Jennifer, my ex-wife, she's just like, don't get so excited. They're probably not going to think they're that big of a deal. They're nice photos, but, so I said, I'm going to go see, I'm going to go try, and I went and I met the two guitar players, and they were super nice, super humble guys, Jason Jones and I just, we talked. I showed them the photos, and they're like, "Oh, these are amazing." And I thought, "Oh, are these guys being serious? Or they really like them, or are they just saying that like they say to everybody?"
Right.
And no, they were super cool, and they're like, "You should shoot our show tonight." And I started shooting with them, and then they would go out on the road, and I would give them food and stuff, so they could, so they could have a good time and really take care of themselves, because I thought that was a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And I wasn't kissing ass or nothing. I just thought I was being genuine with my offering because I was like, these guys are cool. I'm sure they're going to need this stuff, and one day they were like, why don't you go with us? And I'm like, go where? Like, go on the road with us. I was like, really? I'm like, sure. So we went to 3 cities out in Tulsa and Kansas City and Manhattan, Kansas. And we had a blast, and it was great. It was very eye opening, and they were playing with an incredible band from Oklahoma, and it was just a really fun time and a really good eye opener. I learned a lot. I always felt like the drummer. We became friends later, Ben Jeffries. I always felt like he didn't like me because he would always give me a lot of grief, but. I really respected the way that he handled things with me because I now I realize, it's like, what was I doing there? I really didn't belong there. And I think sometimes I would put my 2 cents in when that's none of my business.
Right.
And I think that those are the things that really shape me into who I am, because those things, and even Matt would get mad at me sometimes. Matt Slider would get mad at me, and I learned a lot from that. because I learned my place and to where not to say things or where not to put your 2 cents in or whatever. Because, you know, I think we tend to think that we're now part of something, but you're really not. You're there to do your job, and that's it. You
exactly.
know?
Capture it.
You're not the singer. You're not in the band. That's none of your.
You're not the rock star.
Yeah, your opinion really doesn't matter. You know, and I think that's. I learned a lot from them, but yeah, that's how I kind of got started. You know, and then one day I went to Trees, and I was able to bring my camera in for a show, and then, you know, I just started shooting kind of incognito. And there was a guy named Trey Campbell, which was the house guy. I don't know if he was the official house guy, but he was amazing photos. He's a great photographer. And I really loved his work, you know. And then I would tell him sometimes, I'd be like, man, how do you get that? How do you capture that? He goes, I shoot with an Nikon. You shoot with a what? And I was like, that's why I'm not doing things right, because I'm shooting with a Canon. So I went and bought an Nikon, just on the word of one guy telling me this.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And so I bought Nikon, and I just kind of started getting really into it, you know. And then Clint, the owner of Trees, is from El Paso, and that kind of started a little bit of a kind of friendship with him. We weren't really talking like that. He would just be like, you can come in and take some photos tonight. Like, okay, cool. And so I started shooting a lot of shows, but I wouldn't shoot as many though, because I had a lot of respect for Trey, and I didn't want to get in that. I didn't want to get in that space.
Right.
One day I'm walking up the stairs, and Trey's coming down the stairs, and I said, "Hey, you're Trey. I've talked to you on MySpace, I think, or Facebook. I don't know what it was we're talking on." And I go, "Dude," I said, "I love your work, man." I go, "I wanted to really meet you. This is serious." And he's like, "No," he goes, "I love your work." And he goes, "Dude, some of the stuff you get is amazing." And I'm like, "Really, this guy?" No, I said, no. I said, "Whatever, dude. No." And I said, "Are you the house guy here?" He goes, "Not really. I'm just kind of shooting here." And I was like, man, I said, that's great, dude. That'd be so cool. And at this time, we're living in Fort Worth. So it's like a 50-minute drive for me to come down here, you know?
Brutal.
And we're coming down here 4 or 5 nights a week, you know? And you know, and I was just shooting anything that I could shoot, I was shooting. Because, you know, I'd already shot local stuff, and I still had a foot in the local stuff, but it was all at Curtain Club and at little clubs.
Right.
Trees to me was like a big deal, you know? And so I just, you know, Trey looked at me and he goes, "Why don't you just shoot it? Why don't you just shoot here?" He goes, "I can leave." He goes, I don't have to come back." He goes, "You take over."
What?
Yeah.
He goes, just left?
Yeah. He goes, "You can take it. You can take over." He says, I'm okay." He goes, you should probably do this." And he never came back. I mean, he came back for a couple of shows, but he never came back to shoot.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah, it was really crazy, you know. And I mean, I respect that guy until now. I still talk to him. And it was one of those things, because I felt like he opened the door for me, because, I mean, literally, I just started coming after he stopped going.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got to shoot so many shows. I've gone back and looked at some of the shows that I've shot, and I'm like, wow, I don't even remember shooting half these shows.
What are some of, like, the highlights?
Well, like, we shot, Mice and Men, which was getting really big at that point. God, what else did I shoot early? Deftones. They had their CD release. I got to shoot that. Shot at the drive-in when they first came back, after they had stopped touring for years. Obviously, Seven Dust was one of the big ones for me. There was a lot of little ones like Haim and stuff like that went to get big, because we used to have little transitions in there, and then they'd go out and, you know, and become huge. And there was just so many shows that I don't even remember half of them.
Right.
I don't even remember being at half of the shows. Corey Taylor did a book signing, and that one was great, because Corey Taylor literally sat there and said, "I'm going to talk to everybody, and I'm not going to leave until I talk to everybody that wants to talk to me." And we stayed out there. I told my son, I said, "You want to meet him? Let's wait till everybody's gone."
Mm-hmm.
And we literally waited until 2:30. And he was about to get on the bus, and I go, "Hey, Corey, would you be nice enough to?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even realize you guys were just waiting for me." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you could have been in line an hour ago." I said, "No, we didn't want to cut in front of the fans. Not that we're not fans,
right.
But, you know, to me, it's just, you know, he was super genuine guy, and he's become a pretty good friendly guy. He's a good guy. You know, I'll see him time and time, and he's just really genuine guy.
Sweet.
But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and I didn't shoot anything national until I met the editor of Jam magazine. when I met the editor of Jam magazine, he asked me to come shoot for them, and that's how I started shooting nationals.
Wow.
I shot a national before because one of my friends had a band and they were trying to get signed, or the label wanted to sign them, but I think that deal fell through, and I won't mention their name because they're a good local band, and you know I don't want to shine a bad light on them, but the company actually was part of the Slipknot label and all that. So I got to shoot the first national show that I shot that I was actually approved for, not sneaking around, was Five Finger Death Punch, Slipknot, and Trivium, and that was in Oklahoma City.
Wow. And
that was the first really real show that I got to shoot where I was like, wow, this is it, man. I made it. I made it. And then, and little did I know that it'd still take years for me to get anywhere that was decent. But yeah, that's kind of how I started.
Cool. Yeah. Well, and so then, so then I know, I'm sure there's a lot of time goes by, but then at some point you start shooting for The Observer for a little while?
No, I shot a couple of things for The Observer. I shot a couple of things back in the day. I don't remember who was running it at that time. I shot a burlesque show at what's the name of that place that closed down? It's like a dance club. It's down right there by by trees in Deep Ellum.
Oh, where they had the classes and stuff? Or?
No, where they did burlesque and they did a bunch of stuff. I forgot what that place is called. It's a big club in downtown. I don't know if I want to say Liquid Lounge, but it's not Liquid Lounge. Lizard Lounge?
Lizard Lounge.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I shot a burlesque show there for them. I shot something else for them. I don't know what it was, but it just kind of didn't really go anywhere, because they wanted me to shoot a lot of more like party stuff, and a lot of more documentary stuff, and that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I've actually shot some stuff for Mike a couple times later, now recently, but yeah, it was just one of those things that never really went anywhere, and I was really kind of taken back because I really loved The Observer back then. I was like, man, this is cool, they were like the thing, that was one of those things, and I really enjoyed it. I actually did an interview with Alan Ayo when he was at The Observer.
Mm-hmm. I just read that earlier.
Did you? Yeah. And Alan Ayo, just approached me one day and he's like, hey, you want to come out and talk? I'm like, yeah, sure. I always thought that was weird because I was really, really starting out.
Yeah. Well, the timing of that article, you're talking about like On Tour Monthly is about to happen. So maybe like that transitions into that.
Yeah. And it was really interesting, because it was just, and like I said, I shot that one national and then it just died. It's just like, okay, I'm not doing nothing now. What happened? What did I miss here? But, I did some stuff with Jam and Dave Huff, which was the editor from them back then. Mm-hmm. And there was like the writer. He approached me and he says, hey, you're shooting really good. It looks like you're really picking this stuff up. He goes, I think if you want to do something, you should try to do it now. And I was like, well, you know what? And, it's funny because I all this time, I'd met so many local bands and I'd become friends with so many local bands. And it was a band called Exit 380 whose singers, Dustin Blocker, we're still good friends. He is actually, he's part of the Hand Drawn Records now. And that's I think it's the largest vinyl press in the U.S.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's amazing. I was just there recently, and I'm so proud of him because he's played in a local band, and now he's part of this big thing. And it
records are huge again.
Yeah, and it was funny because me and Blocker had talked about doing something together, and then I said, you know what, I think all I need is a publication, and I can get these shows. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, but that's how it's not going to work, So what I did is I laid some of it out in InDesign. And so I made a fake printable magazine,
okay.
And I kind of got started like that. And, when I would right then and there, I told Blocker, let's do this. You can put some of your content in there. You can promote your company and you can do whatever you want, but help me try to do this the right way. And so Dave Huff says, I'll come write for you. And I said, well, shoot, that's all I need.
Jeez. Yeah.
This is my thing, and we just put it together and I kept thinking of all these cool names and I was like, I'm going to do, But then I had to keep it to where it made it look like it was a national, or it was a publication that actually was written at some point, as opposed to just being web.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to call it On Tour, but there was nothing available. And then I just said, you know what? Because it tells you they want, how many times do you provide a print? Monthly. That sounds good. Mm-hmm. I'll call it On Tour Monthly. So I looked it up, and yeah, it was available. I was like, well, hell, I'm getting this, On Tour Monthly. And so I started applying for shows because Dave Huff had been in the business for 20 years. Actually, Sammy Hagar actually wrote about him in his book.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because he hated him. But Dave Huff came to work for me. And Dave Huff had this who's who of connections of just publicists and all that. Back then that was hard.
Yeah.
You're talking about almost 20 years ago. Can't get that kind of stuff. It's just you have to build these up. Nowadays, they throw their names out there and say, hey, I need you to do this. Hey, can you come do that? And you get all these names really fast.
Right.
But back then, it was like a sacred book. It was like, what is this thing, And it was really cool because Dave, he was an interesting character. A lot of weird things went on with Dave and things that we probably shouldn't talk about. But he really gave me the platform to do what I wanted to do. And, I just went from there, And my whole point of On Tour was to showcase the photos and to really highlight what you didn't see when you were out there smoking and you were doing this and that and not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted people to see a show and be like, man, I got to see that. Or these guys look really cool, and there's one of the coolest things and one of the coolest memories that I have from shooting is I had a person one time. I shot a band called Seether, and the guy was talking about his brother that passed away, and I saw the photo and I caught him in this light, and it was so neat to me, and it was just a moment that I liked, and that's why I shot it. Very, very simple photo. Doesn't have any energy. It's just a cool photo. And some guy messaged me on Facebook and says, man, that's when he was talking about his brother. That's a beautiful photo. And I was like, that's what I do this for. That's why I do it. Because to me, if somebody's actually looking at this and remembering it, that's what I want to do. So that's kind of what I focus on when I shoot. I focus on the feeling of the artist and just what's there, and then sometimes it's something as simple as them, tuning their guitar. It's just that little moment that you see, because it doesn't all have to be screams and jumps and stuff like that. Some of it's just pretty genuine, and
mm-hmm.
Obviously the rest of it all plays part in what you're doing. But to me, it's just somebody being able to look at your photo and identifying something in that really hits them home, hits them and says, hey, I remember this part. This is why I went to this show. And another thing that I did with On Tour Monthly is that I really wanted to go out there and shoot everywhere.
Right.
Not just here. I hadn't grown away from the local stuff. I mean, I still love the local stuff because I was still shooting locals whenever I wasn't doing anything else. But when one day I just put in for a show. I don't remember what show it was. Oh, I put in for Paramore in Chile. And it was crazy because I had a friend, and then we went, he just happened to be from Chile. And he's like, let's go to Chile. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And he goes, I'll pay for it. I'll take care of us. Let's go to Chile. And that's actually one of the first shows that I put on tour that I didn't have a pass for. And we got to shoot it. I got to shoot it because we snuck in the camera in two pieces. The lens on his jacket and the camera body in my jacket. And they didn't catch us with it. So he put me on his shoulders and I took photos of the show. And nobody said anything.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of use that as a catapult. We go everywhere.
Sure.
On tour, we'll shoot anywhere. And I had publicists ask me, hey, can you shoot a show in Chicago? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. No, I mean, you have people in Chicago? Yeah, it's me. I'll do it. And so I started shooting shows. I went as far as Canada to shoot a show. And I just started traveling everywhere that I could, and at first it was hard because I really had to put content on there. And I had to do interviews. So I did a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
I interviewed probably 30 artists. And artists that I loved, that I was like, oh my God, this guy's right in front of me,
Yeah.
And I had to keep my composure and stuff. And it was really cool because it was a whole different game, asking questions and really
Being there with the person.
yeah, and it was cool because I at first I would ask some really generic questions because I think that's how we all start. We don't really know where to go.
Yeah.
But eventually I got to where it was never a yes or no question. It was just it would just kind of like me talking to you. It just kind of transitioned into another story. And it was neat because you got to see some stuff that you're like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think I know how to do this now. And so we did that in combination, and it was just me doing everything. And a friend of mine called Sean Kennedy was doing all my editing on the videos and stuff. And nobody was making any money. And it was just really neat, you know. And that's one of the things. I've never put ads in my publication or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I've never charged money for anything, because to me it was just about giving back to what they've done or what I felt that they did for me as artists or whatever. But that's kind of where it all went, and that's kind of just where it started, and it just went big from there, you know. And ironically, the band that really helped me was Nothing More, because they used to play a lot here in Dallas and in Denton, and those guys were friends. Kind of knew them here and there from talking to them and seeing them. But my friend Ronnie Jackson, which is another shooter of mine that shoots for me, Ronnie Jackson, you know, told me one time, he goes, I know these guys, they're really cool and this and that. And he goes, they're called Nothing More. I said, I know Nothing More. Stop it. You don't know them. Because he would always give me crap. And it was funny because, yeah, one day we were out with them. They were hanging out and they asked us if we wanted to shoot some festivals. And we were like, yeah, we'd love to shoot some festivals. And I had shot one festival alone. But he introduced us to Danny Wimmer, which does all the huge festivals, all the huge metal festivals. You know, they got Metallica, they got Kiss, they got everybody on there. You know, they're awesome. And he introduced us to Danny Wimmer's people, and Danny just let us shoot the whole festival. Wow. We couldn't get on stage or nothing, but we could shoot the whole thing, and we didn't have to turn any of it in, really. So, I mean, we got to meet everybody we can imagine, you know, and it was so fun.
Yeah,
because you know you're sitting there hanging out, eating lunch with Rob Zombie, and it's like, oh my God, it's Rob Zombie,
right?
You know, we had John 5. I got to meet John 5 because he came back to get some beer to take back to his room, and I'm like, well, these guys aren't here. You're welcome to take it.
Yeah.
And then they came back later and brought it back to us, and it was really cool, you know. But it was incredible, you know, because that's when I really realized this is what I thought it was. It's just guys.
Yeah.
Singing a show, and they're just normal people.
Yeah, that's the thing. Festivals, I mean, it's exhausting, but you get to see, like when there's 20 great bands, none of them have an attitude, it seems like, and you can really get to know people. And
it's so great because I got to meet so many people. Yeah, you know, and and to me that really humbled me and made me realize that these guys are all out for the same thing, just to try to make people, you know, and entertain people, and really, you know, and really, you know, I'm sure some of them make money. Obviously, they make some money, right? But I know there's a lot of them that don't. Yeah. You know, and they, you know, they might even have to pay to play the shows. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of blue collar guys that are just paying bills with it.
And it's just one of those things, and you know, you think about that, and to me, it was amazing. I think we did 7 festivals with Nothing More. Ronnie only went to like 4 of them, and I did the 7 total. Wow. And we did that for a couple of years, and it was so much fun. You know, it was incredible. We had a writer named Jordan Buford. I love Jordan, young kid, a great writer. I actually have to tell him to tone it down because he would write like a novel. I'm like, Jordan, we want to focus on the photos. Let's focus on the photos. Right. You know, they don't need to know what you had for breakfast. We need to just get it going. Yeah. And you know, Jordan is an incredible writer. You know, and he's an incredible young man, and he helped me out a lot. You know, so I started out with a little tiny group. You know, and I probably could have done more. But I was happy with where I was, and I'm still happy with where I am. Yeah. So
I mean, make it bigger, and you just got more things to deal with.
Yeah. And you know, and it's fun to be able to pick shows now, and it's fun to be able to just reach out and have someone say, sure. Yeah. Or, hey, I just forgot the show was tomorrow. Can I shoot? Sure, why not?
Yeah. No, it's invaluable too to have a publication that you can get into shows, because that's really the key. Yeah. You know, I had Jessica Waffles on, and that's the next step for her, because it's like you just have to, you know, have someone, and if you did what all of us younger photographers, well, I'm not young, but you know, newer photographers is like, you know, I need to make my own publication. It's like it's easier said than done. Yeah. You know, it's not. I mean, I know a lot of people, including me, that have had the thought, and it's just like,
Yeah, I mean, I have two jobs.
Yeah.
You know, I have my trees job and I have another job, and those are full-time jobs. So, I mean, just the fact that I can even get a show posted is almost impossible, you know.
Yeah.
But literally, when I was doing this, it was just a really nice transition because I was going between jobs, and I just, you know, and I knew I had Blocker to help me out, you know, Dustin Blocker, and I knew I had Jordan to help me out, and it just, and that's how I got it, you know, and it was kind of one of those things where it's either do or die, you know. I want to be this guy, or I'm not gonna be anything.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I've always been very forthcoming and very loyal to those people that took care of me, because it's not an easy thing.
No.
You know, I've seen so many photographers come and go because they don't understand what it is that they're really doing.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not talking about their style or their photography. I'm just talking about they don't really. I think, like, again, it goes back to the superstar, rock star photographer. They think that that's what that is.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like that. You're not going to meet every artist. You're not gonna do any of those things that you think you're gonna do unless you're super lucky.
Sure.
I have a friend called Chris Pogue, and he travels with his country band, been traveling them for years now. That's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Very rare and very organic.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. It happens very, I mean, here and there, nowhere.
Maybe I'm weird because I lived in LA, but I don't want to meet most of them.
Yeah.
I'm fine with, and I have friends still that are like, did you actually meet him? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I mean, my friend, my old drummer from the 90s in LA, Chris Sobchak, has been the drum tech for Elton John for 20 years.
Nice.
So I got to shoot 3 of the farewell shows.
Nice.
It's reminding me, though, of what you said earlier. Was like that first one. It's me and Mike Brooks, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I got my Canon T5i, and like the photos, somehow they're decent, but I'm not proud of them.
But that's the thing, though, and you're not gonna know. You're not gonna know until you try it. But my biggest thing about I think one of the things that I see in photography that really is really what stands out to me more is that when you see these photographers that are really good, or you see the potential in these photographers that you know are good, but their work never changes.
Mm-hmm.
It stays stagnant. And you know, with me, I saw that pattern. I saw it changing. And you know, and now I feel like I haven't reached that next level because I feel like I'm stuck.
Mm.
And it's not that I'm being super critical. I think like there's bands that I've shot. I think Deftones I've shot over 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the bands that I was like, if I ever shoot these guys, I'll never shoot again.
Yeah.
Because that's how excited I was, you know. And now when I shoot them, I try to find something that I've never caught or I've never seen anybody get.
Yeah.
And that's a luxury, because there's a guy that only shot him one time, and he finally got him, and he was so excited, you know, and he got excited because they called him and asked him to go to LA, and always obviously on his own dime.
Sure.
But he got to go, and he was excited.
Yeah.
And I said, "Where are those photos?" He goes, "Well, they didn't tell me to shoot them. They didn't tell me to share them. They said I could just keep them."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, where are they? You should be proud of them."
Uh-huh.
Something happened because he's not showing them.
Oh, okay.
But you know what I mean? And to me, it's like, dude, those are things that, you know, those are opportunities that you're never going to get again.
Yeah.
You know, you got to take them, you know, and it's, you know, I've made some money. I've had people pay me to shoot them, and I've seen people pay me to shoot shows, and that's great, you know, but that's not really why I do it. Mm-hmm. I've had people like Corey Taylor's team ask me for photos. I'm like, yeah, you can have them.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to make any money? I'm like, nah, they're yours. I don't give a shit.
I mean,
maybe you give me a pass next time.
Yeah.
You know, give me an all access. Let me get on stage and watch or shoot.
Yeah.
I won't get in your way. I know the rules and stuff. You know, stuff like that. I just never really thought of it as a money making business. And fortunately, because I don't have all my eggs in that one basket, and a lot of these photographers don't do that, and it's hard because it's not an easy transition. You can make money, but you can't make money just shooting bands. You have to have other outlets.
100%.
You have to, and I think that you know, I've always wanted to put something together where it just kind of explains that whole concept to people, and it's like, look, this isn't how it works. Now, I'm not trying to discourage you from being a photographer, but you really got to realize that there's not that whatever image you have in your head is not really what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, and you can become friends with these guys, and they can respect you, and they'll be cool with you, and they're not going to use you if they respect you. And you have to learn how to make that transition. Yeah. And the thing is that, think about it. I mean, you're in a city of 3.5 million people, you know, or maybe more, maybe less. Who knows? Who cares? Yeah. But you got to think about it. I mean, to me, that's one of the things that you have to think when you're doing this. this to me is a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not something that you just get overnight. You can't just walk in there and say, I want to take pictures of this guy today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's only 10 people in there sometimes. Sometimes there's only 2 people in there.
Yeah.
You know, one of the first shows that I ever shot that I was with myself, it was just me and one other person was Justin Timberlake. And I had just started on tour. It's like, how the hell did we get this show?
Yeah.
You know, and it was just me and the house guy. And the stage was huge. And, you know, I was struggling because I couldn't see. I'm so short. I was like, oh my God, this sucks, you know? And these people actually let me get on the edge of the cornice, and they held me. They let me lay back on them, and they held me my back with their arms so I could take pictures.
Oh, that's cool.
And, you know, security guard was like, you can't do that. And they're like, yeah, we told him to get up here. He can help. He can take photos. And it was just, you know, and that's another one of those things, you know, it's one of those things that you never hear about, you know, because that was just amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of those things that, you know, there's so many reasons to do this, and you really have to respect it because there's really only you and a handful of people in that. Some people you'll never see them again in the pit.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that to me is why I do it. Because I know if there's only 3 of us in there, I'm like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like winning the lotto. You
yeah.
know?
Oh, it's the privilege. That's the thing. Those big acts do not need us.
Yeah.
So like anybody that has an attitude is just not looking at it the right way.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the things that I think that it'd be nice for people to really see and to understand when they want to get into this business, what it's really about. It's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's about them and what they do and what they're doing and how they're changing people's lives by going out there and singing and their music.
Mm-hmm.
I know because I listen to just about anything you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see those artists, then it's just a whole different light, you know, and it's like, this is great. And that's why I have such a hard, that's why I get upset with some of the lighting stuff because it's like, it's like you think to yourself, you know, why can't you take this? This is your only job to run those lights, to set them up and get them going.
Mm-hmm.
You can run this and you can do this and you can showcase them. If you can't put a light on the singer when he's talking, or you can't put a light on the drummer when he's doing a solo, unless they told you prior to, or they said, hey, nothing but reds, I get that because I've seen that.
Yeah, that happens.
I see that at trees all the time, that they say specifically reds only or no blues or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That I get. But when you don't even have or take the time to really learn that or understand what you should be doing as a light guy, it's hard. And it's not because of me. Everybody says, well, you say that because you're the photographer. No, it's not that.
Mm-mm.
I'm talking about from the fan perspective. Because as a fan, I want to see that. That's why I go see a live show. I want to see those pieces highlighted when I'm watching the show. I want to see the guitar player doing the solo and where his fingers are and where the motion is at that particular time. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you pushing all the buttons where you just see the scattered light everywhere. And what's the point of that?
Yeah.
It's different if you're watching techno or Dead Mouse or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, EDM's still not together.
But you're looking at that like a country artist or something, and you're like, man, look at this guy. He just looks so cool. And it's just like Willie Nelson, you know, you're like, man, look at all those wrinkles in his face. And it's so cool.
Yeah.
And you know, and then all of a sudden they're all blue and all dark, and you can't see anything. And I get that. You know, I get some artists don't handle their aging well, and they don't want it. But realistically, I mean, that you're there for a reason. You want to capture it, and you want to do the best you can. So I think that those are that's one of the things that I just don't understand. You know, because you don't have terrible sound.
Yeah.
I mean, the sound's pretty terrible sometimes, but that's based on the venue, or the light guy, or the sound guy just doesn't really know what he's doing. But more often than not, you have more terrible lighting than you do bad sound.
Yeah, because I feel like there's some guys that are like, look at it as an art form, and other guys, it looks like it's a gig. I won't say the venue, but there's a place that I really wanted to shoot, and I shot there a few times. Twice, the opening act is in one color.
Yeah.
So like they're just shitty. And then one of the times, the headliner, they just put the lights on a rotation, and one of them was like hot white. Like it was like none of those pictures even worked, and then it'd be dark. And I'm just like, and I walked back. Dude was on his phone.
Yeah. And
it was like an automated thing. And I'm like, you didn't even set the automation well. But anyway.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's one of the things. Like, I've become friends with a lot of the light guys. And since a lot of them they really take it seriously. There's a few guys in Dallas that are just, they're on it.
Yeah.
You know, and those are and I have a lot of respect for them because they really They really study it.
We're getting to the end here.
Uh-huh.
But before we go, just maybe a few observations on Dallas and Deep Ellum, like pros and cons, as it affects you.
Yeah, Deep Ellum is gone through a lot of changes, and I love Deep Ellum. I love the way that it was just like this big hub for great music and great bands and great venues.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to say it. But I feel like gentrification is kind of just getting involved in a lot of things, and I get it. I get it because that there's certain areas that probably should be like that, and they probably should be that if they're affecting and helping the community.
Mm.
If you're just gonna plow over everything because you want something there that is not there now, then that kind of defeats the purpose, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing with Deep Ellum is I think as long as people can keep going, Deep Ellum is safe, and I think that's one of the things about that people don't understand about like a place like Deep Ellum. You still have that luxury to really be able to walk around and go from venue to venue, and it's not oversaturated like, say, Austin.
Yeah.
But if you're a photographer in Dallas, you have a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of opportunities. Like, I make it easy for, if somebody wants to shoot at trees, just let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, that's one of the things that I want to have that. I want to give someone that opportunity.
That's great because a lot of people starting out just getting to shoot in a big venue like Trees is a big deal.
And some people may say it's not a big venue. Some people may, but I'm like, look if you knew the history behind the venue,
it's a huge venue.
Yeah, you would know.
In that sense, yeah.
Because we had artists. We've had artists that are big. We had Tyler the Creator came in to do 3 shows in the U.S. and Dallas Trees was one of them.
Yeah.
Deep Ellum is probably the best opportunity for you as a photographer to get in or get your feet wet and kind of figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I don't really know of a lot of venues in Deep Ellum that won't let you shoot.
Yeah, it's great. And there's very few bands that'll be like, I don't want you to shoot me,
Yeah. But, it's unfortunate that a lot of people now, they want to shoot Metallica and they've never shot a show in their life. And it's like, that's not the way it works.
No.
So if you really want to get your feet wet, I would really definitely recommend starting in Deep Ellum.
Thanks for joining me on Dallas Famous, and we'll be looking for you on Tour Monthly, and young photographers, hit up James to shoot at Trees.
Hit me up. I'll be there. And if you need anything, just, any advice or any tips, I'm more than willing to help you out.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So that was my interview with James Villa. Thank you very much, James. Theme song, Unstoppable by Salim Nourallah. You can check out the Dallas Famous podcast on deepellumradio.com every Sunday and Tuesday at 1 p.m. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and we hope you check in next week. Thanks again.